I'm Savannah Sellers. It's great to have you with us on a Friday. There's some good news. Joe's on assignment this morning. We're going to begin this morning with President Trump's abrupt decision to terminate all trade negotiations with Canada. The fallout comes after Ontario's government paid for a political ad to run here in the U.S. It features the voice of former President Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. Listen.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer.
In a post on Truth Social last night reacting to this, President Trump slammed the ad, which he called fake. And the Reagan Presidential Foundation had said the ad misrepresented Reagan's speech and that Ontario's government did not ask for permission to use Reagan's remarks. But Trump said, in part, quote, they only did this to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court. The nation's highest court is set to hear arguments on November 5th about the legality of President Trump's use of emergency powers to impose these country-specific tariffs we've been talking about so much. We have NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joining us on this with more. Monica, good morning. So the Reagan Presidential Foundation said it's actually reviewing legal options over the use of President Reagan's voice in this ad. President Trump is no stranger to this type of tactic. He himself has posted videos of his political adversaries, in some cases even using AI-generated videos. But why did this ad cross a line for him? What is the Reagan Foundation wanting to do here? What are the ramifications?
Yeah, and it's unclear exactly what the president thinks is fake about this, because we looked at his actual address, of former President Reagan's address in 1987, and what he says there does line up with what he said in that speech. So it does not appear that it is something that has been manipulated, but the president clearly feels that it's been misrepresented in terms of the argument maybe that former President Reagan was making back then. This was about some tariffs that were slapped on Japan, and this was an address in which the president at the time was saying that he was nervous about additional protectionist measures and what it would do to the U.S. economy. But right now, when we're talking about the U.S. and Canada, of course, a really key trading partner, the U.S. and Canada have been going back and forth, and the U.S. has slapped Canada already with some pretty significant tariffs. Remember that there was going to be a deal that was going to be made, and then it was extended. But you had Prime Minister Mark Carney here at the White House just earlier this month. That discussion didn't yield any breakthroughs, but there's clearly been a lot of disagreement still on how this goes from here. The president clearly not happy about it. But as we have seen before, Savannah, sometimes he does make these claims about pausing all kind of trade, only to reverse it later if some discussions can potentially change that.
Yeah, and Monica, the Reagan Presidential Foundation also saying that they believe it was misrepresentative of the speech, right? What are we hearing from them?
Yeah, they are saying essentially, and that is why they're reviewing some legal options. They claim that this was not something that they felt was representative of that. Again, when you look at the actual speech, these are exact portions from the speech, but we'll see what they end up doing.
All right, let's turn now, Monica, to President Trump's crackdown on crime. He announced yesterday that he's actually calling off plans to send federal troops to San Francisco. And he says this is after he heard from some of his big friends in tech. Hours, though, after that announcement, there was a shootout outside the U.S. Coast Guard base in Alameda. That's near Oakland, near San Francisco. It was a CBS News photographer who was covering a protest that took place there earlier, reportedly saw officers open fire on a U-Haul driver who was backing up his vehicle toward them. So let's unpack all of this. What is keeping President Trump from sending the National Guard to San Francisco? Who do you hear from? What do you hear? And do you think that this particular incident could change anything?
Well, look, this is another example of the president saying in the last couple of weeks he was thinking about sending these federal law enforcement and National Guard troops to San Francisco. And then he says that he spoke with people like the head of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, Mark Benioff, who had been actually a figure in the last couple of weeks, who said maybe there should be National Guard troops sent to San Francisco. But the president said that he spoke to them, people who are close friends of his, close allies, and that they say they want to basically give it a shot. They want to see if they can maintain maintain the situation in San Francisco at the current level that it is without having to surge federal resources. So the president said he spoke with the mayor of San Francisco in the last couple of days, and that the mayor also said, please don't send these additional resources. Let's see if we can get a handle on it for now and then make a decision. And the president said, stay tuned. That could change. But for now, he's not going to send them like he has to other cities, as we've seen in Chicago and Portland, D.C., elsewhere.
All right, Monica, also before we let you go, we got to talk more about the construction, the president's new ballroom at the White House. Lots of videos circulating, of course, of the East Wing being sort of destroyed as they prepare to build this there. It sounds like this project now shaping up to be a lot more complicated, more expensive than it was originally presented as. The president said this is being paid for by private funds. What's the latest here?
Yeah, $300 million price tag and potentially growing, Savannah. But those satellite images show just how large this has been of an undertaking and what was removed. We knew the East Wing, the offices of the First Lady, some staff and additional aides who used to work out of there, but also that entire East Colonnade and Terrace, which is where the movie theater was and where you had this really iconic sun-drenched hallway that a lot of visitors who came to the White House would see. But in addition to that, we've also learned that the Jacqueline Kennedy garden that was just outside of that terrace, as you're seeing there on your screen, was also torn up in the demolition. But I'm told by White House officials there was an effort to try to preserve some of the trees, plants, and shrubbery that was there, ideally to be able to relocate it and perhaps replant some of it when they do eventually rebuild that, though there's no timeline for completion of this really ambitious and giant project. Savannah.
All right, Monica Alba, thanks very much for kicking us off. A lot to cover going on there today. Thank you so much. Well, it's day 24 of the government shutdown, and Democrats and Republicans are not any closer to a resolution. In fact, the Senate has gone home for the weekend, which means the shutdown will at least stretch into next week. It comes as many federal workers, though, are set to miss their first full paycheck today. And now there's growing concern for low-income Americans who depend on government-funded food assistance. NBC News Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles breaks down what happened in the Senate's most recent failed vote.
On day 23 of the federal government shutdown, a new twist. Democrats blocking a GOP plan to start paying federal employees working without pay during the shutdown.
Democrats have rejected every opportunity they've been given to put the American people ahead of their far-left base.
Democrats defending their vote, saying the GOP plan would have given President Trump too much power to decide who would get a paycheck.
Our belief is that no federal employee, no one should bear the burden or be punished for a shutdown they have nothing to do with.
Democrats want Republicans to agree to expand health care subsidies first before they'll vote to reopen the government. Democratic Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, who voted for the GOP plan, criticizing his own party, he says, is keeping the government closed.
Do you think your colleagues are making a mistake by not voting yes for this bill that would pay federal workers today?
I mean, I'm going to vote for anything that's credible and in a way to pay our workers. Why? Who wouldn't want to pay all these people?
And now lines are building at food banks. Amber Hullett, a single mother from Texas, relies on federally funded food assistance that will lose funding in days.
It's hard. We're trying to dig ourselves out of a hole that now we feel like there's no hand up out of, you know.
Across the country, states are dealing with this lack of federal funding in different ways, some pulling from their rainy day funds. In Virginia, they've declared a state of emergency to support the SNAP program. And in California, they've mobilized the National Guard to help food banks across the state.
All right, Ryan Nobles, thank you very much. Well, lawyers for New York Attorney General Letitia James are challenging the appointment of prosecutor Lindsay Halligan ahead of her arraignment today on charges of bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution. Now, Halligan is the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia and was tapped by President Trump for the position after her predecessor resigned. James' attorneys filed a motion citing what they characterize as Halligan's, quote, unlawful appointment in a bid to throw out James' case. We have NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach. He is in Norfolk. He joins us now. Gary, good morning. So let's unpack some of this. Some of that might have been a little wonky sounding, but just first, let's start with reminding us the charges that James faces, what they relate to, and what we expect to see and how she pleads today.
So, yeah, New York State Attorney General Letitia James has prosecuted hundreds of people across the course of her career. Today, she's the one facing charges. And today, the charges are bank fraud and false statements to a financial institution. That all stems from a home she purchased here in Norfolk in 2020. She purchased it. When she purchased the mortgage, she called it a second home. Prosecutors say it was used as a rental property. The problem is those two have two different mortgage rates. And so prosecutors say she saved thousands of dollars over the course of the 30-year loan. NBC News did do some math, though, and it equates to about $50 a month that she allegedly saved because of all this. She is expected to plead not guilty.
And Gary, as we mentioned, James' attorneys, they're expected to file this motion to get this indictment dismissed, but that is based specifically on this prosecutor, this unlawful appointment. They're saying, help us to understand what they're arguing here, how this process works in court. Do they have a real shot with this argument?
So the law states that you're only allowed to appoint an interim U.S. attorney for 120 days. And the previous U.S. attorney that resigned because of this case that Halligan got appointed because of was already there for much longer than 120 days. So James's team is saying the clock has run out. It doesn't start back up at zero. And Lindsay Halligan should be recused from being able to be part of this case, which means the charges should be dropped.
And Gary, James's defense team is also set to ask the judge to enforce rules prohibiting Trump officials and that prosecutor from talking publicly about her case. Why do they feel compelled to do that? What are the chances of that one?
So there's two reasons here. One, because of the comments that Donald Trump has made on his Truth Social platform over the past several months and years about the New York State Attorney General. Of course, they have quite a history. She brought charges against him. But the second is a conversation that the U.S. Attorney, Lindsay Halligan, that we were just talking about, had with a legal journalist over the messaging app Signal just a few weeks ago about the contents of this case. And that is very rare for that to happen. It really never happens across the country. You do not see prosecutors talking to journalists about the case. Usually what happens is their talking happens in the court filings and inside the courtroom.
All right.
Savannah.
Gary, sporting a new piece of hardware, by the way, a recently married man. Congratulations, Gary. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, now let's get to the gambling scandals that are rocking the NBA this morning. They involve the current head coach of the Portland Trail Blazers and a player for the Miami Heat. Coach and NBA Hall of Famer Chauncey Billups and guard Terry Rozier were among more than 30 people arrested in two separate gambling investigations by the FBI. Federal officials say the allegations involved leaked information about NBA players and rigged poker games with ties to the mob. We got to talk a lot more about this one because it just is stranger than fiction. We've got our friend, NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas here. Danny, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so we've got Operation Royal Flush. Let's start with that one. This is the one where I think people are like, what about these details? X-ray tables to read cards, the card shufflers, contact lenses. I mean, some of this stuff sounds made up, like something you'd see in a James Bond movie. Really happening here, though. Walk us through the details that we know and what specific accusations and charges would be.
Right. According to the allegations in the indictment, the high tech involved, as you just described, was really impressive. Everything from possibly X-ray tables, which I am really looking forward to the evidence on that, but also card shufflers, automatic card shufflers. You know, I do a fair amount of card magic myself, so I'm familiar with some of these gimmicks.
That's a real fact.
Yeah, it really is, yeah.
Does magic. We've all seen it at the Christmas party. It's lit. Continue.
So there are these automatic shufflers that can create hands that figure out how you deal them out, and you get an amazing hand and I get a lousy hand. That's been around forever. And in fact, there are humans who can do that too. The problem is you can catch them with the naked eye if you know what you're looking for. You also hear about these mark cards. I own mark cards, but the kind they used, well, what they are is they show what the actual card is on both sides, but it's hidden. The problem with your ordinary mark cards is that in a poker game...
Say it again. They what?
It's sort of concealed. If you know what you're looking for, you can see it very easily, but nobody's thinking to look on the back design of a card for an embedded, three of hearts, which it'll be right there if you know where to look. The problem with poker, as opposed to magic, is that the people playing in a game of Hold'em, they hold the cards, so they can eventually look at them. What they allege instead is something called infrared mark cards, which I've heard of, never seen in action, but they use a principle that is something like when you go to a 3D movie and you have those glasses, or when you wear those glasses, you can see an image because of the filtering in the glasses, like a polarization, so to speak.
Okay.
So it filters the light and somehow allows in a glowing paint that you otherwise couldn't see. And the reason that helps is, number one, you can examine the card as a player and you don't see anything unless you have the glasses. And number two, you can make the number gigantic so you can see it at distance. Whereas with normal mark cards, I would have to get really close to see them. They're small so they can be concealed. But you can buy, I mean, you know, that iconic bicycle deck where that everybody recognizes the back? They make a set of mark cards out there. I own them, and they're fantastic. But the problem is you got to get real close to see. At my age, I got to get real close to see.
We have Angie Lastman waiting in the wings.
Oh, no. She is going to make so much fun of me. This is so embarrassing.
Well, Danny,
yes, Angie,
you have to admit,
I was not popular in high school. Do I have to say that out loud? There, I've said it.
Weren't you there when he was
so
like dazzling us at the Christmas party? It's just so funny, Danny, because it makes so much sense. And you're like, you know, I've represented clients such as these, and I've argued this in a court. And now you're like, when I use my marked card.
Right, this is supposed to be a legal segment. I turned it into David Blaine.
No, but honestly, it's extremely helpful. Like, you just made a lot of stuff that I've been reading a ton about make a lot more sense than I could understand. Okay, let's talk about Operation Nothing. This is where it's like, you know, I'm going to be out earlier than normal because I'm going to fake an injury or whatever, that type of stuff. Walk us through this one.
Yeah, because, and your example you gave would be a perfect way in a prop bet. Now, the advent of the prop bet, it's come around since about the 80s. It's really evolved. In the old days, you would bet on, hey, the Packers to win or the Packers to cover the spread. The advent of the prop bet means you bet on virtually everything you can imagine, including the performance of an individual player. And when that happens, there is a tremendous potential for corruption. You can go to that player and say, hey, the over-under on you scoring tonight is 10 points. So if you just get hurt in the first quarter with 5 points, we make a ton of money. Here's why this doesn't work in the modern era as compared to the old era. Two major reasons. Number one, a lot of this is online. There's tons of data. So you can see when there's a spike, hey, everyone's betting the under on so-and-so playing in a game. That's very suspicious. And then, of course, the second part of that is the prop bet itself, the fact that that is like the new thing that people bet on. And so I think probably we're going to find in the evidence is they saw a data spike in somebody betting on an under for a particular player. That's a dead giveaway. Kind of thing with the data that we collect now that makes a crime like this easier to investigate than it would have been 30 years ago when you're putting your bet with a bookie.
Danny, quickly, how also, I think this is sort of what you're touching on, but just the fact that there is so much legal sports betting, which is kind of a murky area, even as you cross state lines, laws are different. But how does that impact what we're seeing and things like this, that people are legally sports betting all the time and doing most of it online?
Right. I mean, it's a really interesting question because presumably in games like poker, these are games that people could have played at the casino and not had to worry about X-ray glasses and X-ray tables and things like that. So it's a big question of why do people choose to go to play in these potentially corrupted poker games. But of course, on the sports betting side, people have said for decades now that legalized gambling is a major threat to professional sports because professional sports depends on confidence in the idea of pure competition. So it's a tremendous threat, especially the prop bet, the bet where you can bet on one person's performance in a game. This is something that the NBA and all pro sports need to be very concerned about.
Danny's going to stick with us. Our next block will be card tricks.
That's absolutely. I will pull things out of hats.
You have like a quarter behind your ear for me?
Yeah, I can see Angie snickering already. It's going to be brutal.
Angie, you have any questions? Okay, let's go see Angie now. It's time for a check. Danny, thank you so much. On your morning news now weather, Tropical Storm Melissa is slowly moving into the central Caribbean region today. It may strengthen quickly, though, into a major hurricane this weekend. As you're well aware, Angie Lastman is in studio with us with the latest forecast. Hi, Angie.
Hi, guys. How am I supposed to follow up with Danny with his card tricks and magic knowledge? We do still have Tropical Storm Melissa, of course, churning in parts of the Caribbean, and this is essentially stationary right now. How often do you see movement from the National Hurricane Center that just says stationary? That's what we're dealing with today, and we've got those winds up to 45 miles per hour right now. Notice it's about 160 plus miles from Kingston right now. It's kind of just going to stay in that general vicinity for the long term, so no surprise. We have folks across the Caribbean that are gearing up for these hurricane impacts. So the hurricane watches are in effect for Jamaica, and they're in effect for Haiti right now. And we will still see some of these locations across this region picking up some really ample amounts of rain because of how slow this system is going to move. Notice it does become a hurricane by the time we get into the weekend, and then rapidly intensifies into a category for a major hurricane by the time we roll into early next week. So notice that we're not covering a lot of ground with this system here from now through the next couple of days. We're going to continue to see this system kind of churning in this region, and then eventually picking up some really ample amounts of rain for folks across this region. So 15 inches of rain in some spots is possible. We'll see this down the line potentially work into parts of the Atlantic. No threat to the United States as of right now, guys.
We have a present for you.
Oh, gosh. What?
Watch the ring. Watch the ring. Can we see the ring? Right. We got it right here in this camera. Here we go. Right there. And poof, it's gone. Yeah, well, obviously, the kids figured that one out very quickly. Yeah, I know. Well, that's just for the kids.
Can you do it one more time? Yeah,
one more time? You got to pay a lot of attention, folks. Camera move high def very fast. There it goes, right there. And it's gone.
The thing that you don't see behind the scenes while we're waiting to come on the show is Danny with his cards, March cards, allegedly, now I know, doing magic tricks.
Is that how you do your tricks on us?
I exude coolness, don't I? Right. Not exactly.
Honestly, now magic is cool, and you know that.
Yeah.
Yes, but for most of my life, it was not. Yeah, tell it to the kids when they put me in the lockers. That was very rough. Very difficult.
You need a hug, I think.
Thank you.
We love you,
Angie
Danny.
Glassman.
We love you.
Thank
And honestly,
you, and I love
that
you
was
guys
an
too.
extremely helpful segment about the story everybody's talking about.
And now I'm going to disappear. I'll see you.
Love you both. We have much more to come on Morning News Now this morning. A lot to get to for y'all. Later this hour, off target, the retail giant cutting a record 1,800 corporate jobs. What's behind the most layoffs for the company in a decade? But first, though, after the break, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza growing more dire by the day as the fragile ceasefire there holds. The urgent warning from the World Health Organization. Stay with us.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.